All right, today I'll tell you about my experience dropshipping and how I lost around $7,000 doing that. So initially, I signed up for Hustlers University, which was back then $50. I don't know if it's still $50. That's a separate video, my feedback on that. But I remember I was pretty inspired by the wins there and everything I saw. So I really decided to dive into dropshipping and make the best of it. Unfortunately, things didn't pan out as well as I'd hoped for. Um, so here's my experience. I initially started out with sourcing products from China, AliExpress, Alibaba. Um, I didn't have a niche, so I was just trying out random stuff until something would stick. Basically, I tried toys, I tried lamps, and different kitchen utensils, all that sort of stuff. And I remember I signed up for Shopify, which is the most used platform I think nowadays for dropshipping, and that was pretty convenient to use. No friction there. I built out my website, logos, product pages, checkout pages. Everything was up to snuff, basically. And after I'd done that, I'd picked my products and I built out my website. I started running traffic, paid traffic to it in the form of Facebook ads. And initially, for the Facebook ads, I would use just images, and my stats were abysmal. I would it just the CTR was not good at all. CTR is click through rate. Eventually, as I figured out that wouldn't work, I resorted to using Fiverr, and I would start paying Fiverr artists for images, videos, right? So I would tell them what the AliExpress product is, just give them product page, give them whatever images I could find that, and just ask them to make a video for the product. And unfortunately, that bombed as well. So I didn't get any traction doing that. So by that point, I had spent a good amount of money running ads and just trying out different things. I was making some sales, but just not enough to justify all the spend. So I had to sort of rethink my strategy. And I stumbled upon a couple of YouTubers, very small YouTubers, who were advocating for using Google ads instead of Facebook ads. And this is something that, at least back then, Hustlers University professors were not talking about. They were strictly advocating the three-step process, build your website, run paid traffic via Facebook ads, and that's basically it, right? But these guys were saying something totally different. Just use Google ads and flip the model on its head, right? Because with Facebook ads, you have your ad shoved into people's faces. Whereas with Google search, it's the exact opposite. People are looking for something very specific. And if you're relevant, you show up, and there's a much greater likelihood that people will buy. And so that seemed reasonable to me, and that's exactly what I did. Um, there's a lot of tricks to Google Ads. That's a whole separate video. But I set up my campaigns. I ran tests. Um, and at that point, I had settled on the lamp niche. Lighting fixtures. Ceiling lamps, bedroom lamps, kitchen lamps, chandeliers, all sorts of sort of lights, right? And I was getting some success. Actually, I had some days where I would turn some profit. Like my best day, I think, was around $700, which was quite a lot, quite a lot. But there were other days where I wouldn't get anything. So it was pretty sporadic, pretty sporadic. And on top of that, I was facing some issues with customs, right? So as you delve deeper into dropshipping, you start to figure out that there's a lot of things you need to think about. You know, it's not only building your website, writing the copy, and running ads. Uh, you also have to deal with your suppliers. You have to communicate with them. You also have the customs, because sometimes when the goods get held up at customs, it's it's a nightmare, right? It's just not good. And there are these regulations that you have to read about. There's now $150 limit from AliExpress to, from China basically to Europe or the US. Sorry, not sure about the US because I was drop shipping to Europe, but still, there are a lot of things that you need to consider when doing that. And eventually, I completely turned away from AliExpress and started using other suppliers such as, or middlemen such as, CJ Dropshipping and eProlo. And these guys, they operate on a much better level, to be honest. They CJ Dropshipping, they have their own delivery line. And what this means is you get cheaper logistics and better delivery times. And if you're doing drop shipping or any kind of, if you're selling any kind of physical product, you really need to nail that down. Just the delivery times of AliExpress are horrendous. It could take upwards of 20 days, and that's just a no bueno. Whereas with CJ Dropshipping, they have their own specialized delivery line, and it takes somewhere between 5 and 9 days, including weekends, for the package to arrive. And this is a much, it's just a step up from what people are used to. And I use that CJ Dropshipping. Also, eProlo, they also have their own logistics. They don't have their own line, but they still use good, well-established logistics providers in China, which make sure that you get your package delivered on time. So this is all good. And initially, I was gaining some traction, selling the lamps. I had found a really good best-selling lamp. It was like sort of a this kind of a straight up lamp, luminescent. It was really cool. And I remember a guy made an order for like $500. He just paid 3 lamps out of Germany for some hotel lobby, I guess. And $500 is quite a lot for a single order. And so I had to split up the lamps into 3 separate orders so that they wouldn't get held up at customs. So these are sort of the maneuvers you have to do if you want to, um, you know, I can't say be successful because I wasn't, but these are sort of tricks that you have to, you have to learn on the fly. And eventually, after running that, running Google Ads, the lamps from eProlo, CJ Dropshipping, that wasn't working. I had made a good amount of revenue, I think around maybe $10,000, but I was still not turning a profit. I was losing money. And so eventually I um, completely turned my back on the Chinese sort of agents like CJ and eProlo. And I started looking for local manufacturers. I'm from Eastern Europe, and I actually found a couple here in my country that also produce lighting fixtures. And so I contacted them, and oddly enough, um, they agreed that I would sell their lamps in Germany. So that's what I was doing. I was um, drop shipping to Germany, basically. My German website was in German, and that actually sounded amazing. So I started uploading the catalog, you know, just tagging everything and just doing everything I can to make sure I had a lot of products, good variety, and I was a very niche website. And as usual, I was running Google Ads. And the good thing is I managed to drop the transportation times, because in the first instance we're sourcing from China, and so even with the best providers like FedEx, DHL, you couldn't get less than 5 days. But here I was sourcing from Eastern Europe to Germany, and that was usually around 3 days. So the turnaround was much better. And sorry, I need to drink some water here. and things were going well. I was streamlining my processes, with the supplier, the payment processor, PayPal, um, the delivery company. Everything was good, but I still wasn't turning a profit, and I was in my balance sheet. I was just stacking up losses, even though I was making sales. And so that's not a good feeling. It's a good thing I had a buffer of cash to withstand these tough times. Um, what I did then was I signed up for another sort of Discord server, a paid one, a paid community, and I I gave them my website, basically the link, and asked for a brutal feedback. And that's something I also had done in Hustlers University, but the feedback I got there was not the most productive. So I was looking for other solutions, to make this work. I had good suppliers, good products. Even the products were selling in my country, so they were bound to sell in Germany as well, right? Well, apparently not. But the guys there, what they told me was um, basically get better photos. And the photos I had, I mean, that's a no-brainer, right? If you think about it, the first thing customers see is your photos. So what they told me, get better photos. I already had decent photos. They were the ones from the manufacturer, and all of them were on a white background. So that's what I did, right? I went out to I bought some of the products, and I hired a local sort of photographer to basically have a photo shoot with the products, and then just return them to me and give me the photos. And unfortunately, things didn't go that well with this photographer or the company he was working for, and we had to cancel all that. And at that point, I had already lost so much money, like $7,000, that I simply didn't want to sink more money into this basically losing endeavor. And maybe if I had continued, actually the website is still up and running, but maybe I'll continue that someday. But if I had continued, I was just too. Basically, I had learned my lessons. After I saw how much time it takes to run a dropshipping store correctly, with building the website, writing the copy, photos, sourcing, refunds, bookkeeping, invoicing. You have it doesn't end, It doesn't end. And not to mention payment processors. So if I could give you one piece of advice for payment processors, this is always keep some cash on hand there. Because what I would do is, as soon as I would get the money in PayPal, let's say, I would withdraw that to my bank account, and then a customer would come back and say, look, I want a refund. And now what do, right? You don't have the funds in PayPal. You have to ask for a bank account and then wire that through some other means. And that's not very helpful, for the customer. It's not a good experience. So always keep some cash if you're using PayPal in your PayPal account, but not too much, because if they decide to ban you, which happens, restrict your account, which happens quite a lot, or so I've heard, then you might lose all of your money. So you need to sort of walk this tightrope, between having cash but not too much. Um, and another tip for PayPal: always upload your tracking numbers. If you're using a reliable logistics provider, then you'll have no problem uploading a valid tracking number, and they will not hate you for dropshipping. Because these companies, PayPal, Stripe, they tend to hate dropshippers, and that's where a lot of your problems might come from. So if you manage to solve this, with the logistics thing, uh, this automatically solves your payment processor issues, and you will be in much better shape. Um, Another thing I found really difficult to maintain, that was the Google Merchant Center, or the so-called GMC. This is kind of difficult to get into, but basically you have all of your products there listed, all of their variants. So let's say at the peak of the store, I had like 80 products, all of them light, lights, lamps, etc. And that was 100 products times a couple of variants each, and it quickly grows into a mess, basically. So you always have to be vigilant about keeping your product list updated and not having any warnings or errors. Otherwise, Google won't like that. But there are many tutorials on that in YouTube if you're interested. It's just my experience that it was kind of difficult to maintain and keep it synchronized. So all in all, there's a lot of moving parts here in dropshipping, and it's not easy, or at least not as easy as people make it out to be, to make money. So maybe I think I touched on the main points. Um, but yeah, that's about it.